All right, today let's talk about what is a broker, how do you work with a broker as a food startup, as a food entrepreneur, what do you need to know to make this a successful relationship. Very much the basics. A broker, a food broker, is a sales representative. That's their job. They sell your product and they act as a liaison between the food manufacturer, you who makes the product, and retailers or food service providers. Food brokers, what sets them apart from your internal sales structure, they are independent contractors with multiple clients. Some of them, they work for large terms. One of them work for themselves, and it's a one-woman or a one-man band. It entirely depends. Now, food brokers also add a whole bunch of other services and make themselves useful in a whole manner of different ways, and we're going to go through all of them. Quick question that I always get from entrepreneurs: how do food brokers get paid? And it's very simple. Food brokers, they get paid through a commission system, a percentage of the sales they generate from the manufacturers they represent. When a food broker takes you on as a new account, it will charge you a retainer for a while, typically until an agreed upon sales volume has been reached. And then the retainer switches to commission or to a model where there is a commission plus a retainer. And you know, why a retainer? Why am I having to pay a retainer to a food broker? And that's very simple. When a food broker takes on a new account, specifically a new product that may not be in market yet, it takes time and money to introduce new products to retailers. You can't introduce a product to a retailer and expect instant sales. So it takes time to build this initial traction in the market. And that's what we're paying for. That's what you're paying for with your retainer. They need time to do their work. And I would say when you start with a broker, they will ask you to sign a contract of a minimum of 6 months, ideally 12 months. So make sure that you have the money needed for that commitment. And I think it's really important not to expect instant results. Don't expect miracles. Bit of an idea, everything is negotiable. So this is a guideline only, but a typical retainer will be between $3,000 and $10,000 per month, depending on the size of the opportunity, depending on the number of products you're bringing to market. And a typical sales commission will be between 3 and 7% of the sales that a broker generates for you. There are additional costs, so this is not necessarily a cheap date. You will be covering travel costs, you will be covering trade samples, free fills, which is basically free samples a broker will give to a retailer to figure out if your product actually sells in their stores. Depending on the stores, there may or may not be listing fees, which are charged by the retailer as a fee when a new product gets listed by them. There will be shipping costs, trade shows, etc., etc. So again, you need to be quite well funded before you start talking to brokers. Question always get asked: what is the difference between a broker and a distributor? Very simple. A broker generates sales, but they don't take possession of your product. So your product stays with you, the legal possession. A distributor's job, and we have a separate video on distribution, a distributor's job is to purchase your product. They buy your product from you, and then they transport and store it, and then they sell it to the retailers. So a distributor will take legal ownership of your product. A broker, they won't buy and resell your product. A distributor will buy and then resell your product. That's the big difference. Another question: what's the difference between a broker and a merchandiser? Merchandisers will move from store to store. They make sure your product looks great. So this is my own brand here, Oralis Botanical Brewing, and you can see how wonderful it looks here on shelf. And that is just a great example of merchandising, where we have the single cans at the top, and then underneath we have our beautiful 4-packs. Just a great example of merchandising, new item, call out on shelf. That's what merchandisers do, but they will rarely open new accounts. So let's talk about finding the right broker in the market. And finding the right broker it's really essential that you research and evaluate potential brokers. You need to make sure it's a good fit and that the broker you're working with can actually help you get to your goals, the goals that are important to you. Brokers tend to be, not all of them, but the majority of them, they tend to be category specific. They, for example, baked goods, frozen produce, etc. So when you talk to brokers, make sure the broker has experience operating in the same category that you're operating in. It's incredibly important. How do you find a good broker? One of my first suggestion is join support groups. There are many groups, many Slack groups, many other groups where food entrepreneurs get together and exchange information. There are Facebook groups, Reddit groups, Slack groups. I'm a member of a whole bunch of them. And my suggestion is ask there. Ask your peers saying, look, this is my product, this is where I'm trying to sell, this is my geographical location, I'm in the Northwest US, I'm in Canada, I'm in Western Canada, I'm in the Southeast, or the West Coast. Talk to your peers and find out what their experiences have been, and then ask for a personal recommendation. In my opinion, always the best way to find out a good match in that market. The other thing you can do, and there's value in this as well, visit trade shows, have a conversation. One of the great things about trade shows is at trade shows, everybody is there to have conversations. Everybody is there to build new business. So while sometimes it might be difficult to get in touch with people, at trade shows I find it's really easy because everybody is there to build those new connections. So I would suggest trade shows as a good idea. Re-evaluating, researching, evaluating potential brokers. You need to enter the relationship with a really good idea of what you're trying to do here. If you're coming in and you're saying, look, my own sales efforts, they have maxed out and I need help, or we're entering a new market that we don't have a physical presence in and we need help. Don't be ambiguous, know exactly what you want from a broker. Ask any questions, right? If you leave room for ambiguity, if you leave room for misinterpretation, it will come back to haunt you, I guarantee you. And I've done this so many times, I'm speaking from my own experience. Write everything down. Check references, super important. What are other people's experiences? And that goes back to getting your introduction from people you trust, from your peers. Evaluate. Is this broker an expert in my category? What are his or her connections in my category to category buyers? And, the other thing is also make sure that you take the time. What are the broker's processes? How do they work? So listen to the broker because they are bringing their expertise to you. And finally, be 100% certain how the broker gets paid. So make sure you understand the commission structure. Make sure you understand when initial payments convert to commission, what are the levels of sales that need to be generated. Again, don't leave anything to chance and make sure everything's written down. So, getting ready to work with a broker, you need to ask yourself if you are actually ready to work with a broker. Is your business at a point where it makes sense to work with a broker? And do you have your ducks in a row? The first thing you need to be honest about is your financials. Don't exaggerate your numbers, right? Don't go to a broker and say, well, our sales are 3 million, when in reality they're less than 1 million. Because that kind of stuff, and this happens all the time when I talk to broker friends, that brands are exaggerating their sales in order to get a broker excited, and then they find out the sales are nowhere near where they want to be, and everybody loses. Be honest. Open up your books, tell your broker what your sales are, and then work together from there. Another thing that's really important, and this again is frustrating for brokers when it goes wrong, be ready to deliver. So make sure your manufacturing capacity is up to scratch. So when a broker brings in a big order, when a broker starts selling, when retailers start taking note of what you're doing, and if you then can't deliver, then the relationship breaks down. So make sure you have enough stock, make sure you have enough ingredients, make sure your production facility can actually handle the sales that your broker will bring in, and get your broker involved in these conversations, right? Again, be honest with your broker and say, hey, look, the max capacity that we have max number of products we can create per month, we can manufacture per month are X. Don't sell more than this. And if you do get a bigger number in, let me know in advance so we can upscale our manufacturing. You need to make sure your packaging is ready for retail. And this is another pain point that I'm getting from brokers all the time, that food entrepreneurs come to them and their packaging isn't legal. They are not GS1 registered. They don't have proper UPC code. All of these things, you need to make sure your ducks are in a row. You need to make sure you've done your homework before you start working for a broker. Do you have enough funding to work with a broker? Do you have enough funding to upscale your manufacturing? Do you have enough funding to pay for proper packaging? Is your insurance up to sniff? I said this before, ability to scale your production is incredibly important. Do you have your certifications in place? When you start going after larger retailers, they will ask you for certain certifications, food safety, manufacturing certifications. Make sure they're in place before you even start working with a broker, because otherwise you're wasting time. And if you're wasting time, you're still paying the monthly fee to your broker, but your broker can't sell because you haven't done your homework. So make sure everything has been done before you even hire a broker. And finally, make sure you have good sales material. Make sure your sell sheets absolutely sing. In this day and age, make sure you have digital sales sheet, right? Rather than just having printed materials for your broker, make sure they have PDFs, make sure they have PowerPoint presentations, and your broker will help you there. Most brokers have an idea of exactly what they want and need, and they'll help you generate those materials. So let's talk about some of the services that brokers offer to food entrepreneurs. Sales and marketing strategies. That's, in my experience, one of the areas where brokers can be really helpful. And that sales strategy can then help you increase production and reach new market. One of the first things that we do when we sit down with a new broker, when we hire a broker for our company, we sit down and we say, well, look, these are the sales numbers we want to achieve. That's the market we want to enter. Those are our dream retailers we want to talk to. And then we create a marketing strategy of how we achieve all of these goals, of how we talk to the right people, make the right connections, and then get into these markets. Brokers also help you with supply chain management. Not all of them do, but many do. And we rely on our brokers to talk to our distributors and to make sure that our products get moved from A to B to C in a timely manner. So we have agreements with our brokers that this is part of their job, and they take this away from us, which frees us up to do all the other things. It frees us up for product development, manufacturing, marketing, and to make YouTube videos. Your broker, if you have hired a good broker, will have an absolute wealth of industry contacts. So if you trust your broker, and you should, because otherwise you're in the wrong relationship. If you trust your broker, when you trust your broker, and let's say you need a new distribution partner, you need a new logistics partner, my first phone call is to our broker and say, hey, I'm trying to achieve the following thing. Who do you know? Who can you recommend? And I want to say 8 out of 10 times, the broker has a recommendation. You make that phone call, you chat with people, but at least you have a starting point where to start. So brokers are really useful for that kind of thing. The broker will also negotiate the price with retailers, and here the connections that the broker has in the industry become really important. If the broker has a good connection to a category manager, if a broker has a good connection to a retailer, then the broker's reputation will be useful for your product. And if a broker goes in and says, look, this is the velocity the product has achieved at other stores, these are our sales numbers, this is why the product is on trend, that will help you negotiate costs with retailers. It will help you keep your listing fees to a minimum, and it will help you keep your margins healthy. When you start working with a broker, before you sign the contract, make 100% sure you understand every single last items on there. And if you don't, there is absolutely no shame of going to a lawyer. Indeed, you should go to a lawyer and have it reviewed. Don't leave space for misunderstanding or disputes in what you're doing there. Broker's role in sales and marketing. You need to understand the difference between B2B marketing, which is business to business, and B2C marketing, which is business to consumer. And your broker will focus on the B2B, the business to business aspects of the marketing. When you start working with a new retailer, when you start working with a new distributor, one of the very first questions after they've asked you about your margins, they will ask you for your promotional plan. So what are your plans to take part in discounts, flyers, special display, many other items? Sometimes being a food entrepreneur feels like everybody is taking you by the ankles, holding you upside down and shaking you for all the money that's in your pockets. And a broker will help you, a good broker will help you manage these conversations so you don't end up flat broke by the end of them, because brokers have experience there. Brokers know where retailers are willing to give. Brokers also know where retailers are looking at an investment as something essential, and they will be able to help to guide you through this absolute maze that it sometimes feels retailers put in front of food entrepreneurs. Consumer marketing, almost always completely up to you, not something that a broker typically touches. That's for you to talk to people like myself and our agency. We help people in that respect. Margins are so important. I'm going to do a separate video on margins very soon and how to understand margins in the food industry. A good broker, one of their main jobs is to keep such a close eye on your margins. So to make sure that when you're selling, when you are getting involved in marketing with the retailers, that your margins don't suffer, that they still stay healthy. Because if they don't, you'll be out of business in no time whatsoever. Contact management, one of my favorite things about working with a broker. They will be your point of contact, your main point of contact, buyers, distributors. And again, this allows us to focus on other parts of our business, mainly product development, marketing, and having these conversations that shape our business. So working with a broker there and pushing these conversations in front of the broker rather than in front of us is incredibly useful. So for example, yesterday, to give you a real life example, yesterday I got an email from a customer. They were unhappy with how they received their product from an online sales interaction. And rather than me having to figure out who to speak to, rather than me complaining about this, I just forwarded the email to our broker and said, hey, can you please take care of that? And that's just incredibly freeing, that you don't have to follow up on every little email, every little contact like that. New markets and increasing distribution with your broker. This is really important. For a food startup to grow, you need to go deep before you go wide. And what I mean by this, you should and you need to reach velocity, sales numbers at a few stores before you open 1,000 stores. Getting your product into stores is expensive. It costs money in production, it costs money in ingredients, distribution, listing fees, free fills. All of these things cost money. And what you need to do before you go wide, you need to prove to yourself in a few stores that your repeat sales are actually making it worthwhile for your products to go into all of these other stores. So a good broker will get you into a few key stores. Good broker will get you into some high performance stores, and then they will sit back and they will watch the sales. And if the sales are strong, if the repeat sales are strong, if the sales velocity is strong enough, only then should you go wide. What this allows you to do, it allows you to correct mistakes. If you're finding that people are buying your product once but not again, You can find out why that is. Are they buying it, but not buying it because it's too expensive? Don't they like the flavor? Etc., etc., etc. So don't grow too quickly. Before you go wide, go deep. Anything else is a surefire recipe for getting out of business quickly. Good broker will be a trend watcher. They'll keep their eye on food and drink trends around you, and they will keep you informed as well. So this is your job as well as a food entrepreneur. But having a broker online is just a really good, it's another pair of eyes in that particular market. A broker will be a category expert. And one of the most valuable pieces of advice that I've been given by a category manager was the category manager looked at me and said, I expect you to be more of an expert in this category than I am. And I didn't understand this at the beginning, but then I finally got it when I understood that category managers get moved all the time by retailers. So a category manager may do seafood 6 months, and then they may be baked goods another 6 months. So they expect you, the manufacturer, to be an expert on the category and to guide them along the category. So a broker will help you specifically at the beginning, when you're not that much of an expert, to understand what you're talking about and to be confident in your conversations. Industry knowledge, I think we already talked a little bit about this. They will help their knowledge of the industry. They will help their connections to secure additional points of sales for you. And I think this is really important. Success is shared. Your success is their success. The more they sell, the more they earn. So listen to your broker. Make sure you work in a true partnership with your broker. And the more you share, the closer you work with brokers, in my experience at least, the better the relationship and the more money everybody makes. So, key takeaways from our conversation. A broker is a salesperson. Pick the right broker for your category, super important. They get paid by a mix of retainers and commission. And it starts with a retainer typically, and then it switches to a commission. In my opinion, personal recommendation is the best way to choose a broker. Talking to your peers. You need time and you need money. Don't start working with a broker if you don't have either of these, because it is bound to fail. Good broker will support your marketing with retailers, not with consumers. A good broker will negotiate your deals. And a good broker will help you to expand your business. That's the entire purpose. Anyway, I hope you find this useful. Let me know in the comments what you think. And if there's any other questions you may have, any other videos you'd like to see that help food entrepreneurs negotiate the maze of retail and manufacturing.